Today, we're diving into one of the most desperate and honestly secret weapons of the Second World War, Japan's piloted rocket bomb, the Ohka. But we're not just going to look at it as a piece of hardware. We're going to see it through the eyes of the young men who were asked to fly it on a mission they knew they would never come back from.
So let's set the scene. It's April 12th, 1945. High above the East China Sea, inside a Mitsubishi G4M Betty bomber, Lieutenant Saburo Dohi is getting ready. His focus is totally locked on that secret weapon tucked into the belly of his plane, the weapon Japan is hoping will finally turn the tide of the war. An American fleet has just been spotted. It's time. The attack is on. Anti-aircraft fire starts exploding all around them, but Saburo just walks towards the simple trapdoor in the floor. It's a hatch the pilots have grimly nicknamed the Devil's Gate. He turns to his comrade, radio operator Zenji Sugano. And in that moment, there's no fear. Just this calm exchange of respect before the final act begins. With just those simple words and a smile, Saburo takes a deep breath and disappears through the gate. He climbs down a small ladder into the freezing, wind-blasted bomb bay and somehow eases himself into the incredibly tight cockpit of the Ohka, just hanging there, thousands of feet above the sea. Okay, so Saburo runs his final checks, signals he's ready, and waits for the drop. His heart is pounding. But nothing. A whole minute goes by, and you can just imagine this cold fear creeping in as his target, the whole reason he's here, starts to slip away. Back inside the bomber, they realize the explosive release bolt has misfired. Zenji Sugano has to release his friend manually and is forced to look away as he sends Saburo plunging into the sky. So how in the world did a young man like Saburo Dohi end up in an impossible situation like this? Well, to understand that, we have to rewind the clock a little bit. Picture it, August 1944, a group of fresh-faced naval cadets, a lot of them good friends right out of flight school, like Saburo Dohi and Hideo Suzuki. They are absolutely buzzing with excitement. They've been summoned for a top-secret project, and all they know is that they might be chosen to operate a single, powerful new weapon that could be a total game-changer. Their commander, Captain Takahashi, walks into the room, and his face is just solemn. He asks anyone who is married, an only son, or has only one living parent to raise their hand. And as hands go up around the room, those men are quietly asked to leave. Suddenly there's a stunned silence and a whole lot of empty seats. The entire mood just shifts. And then he just lays it out, the brutal truth. Takahashi explains that this new weapon can take out an entire aircraft carrier in a single shot. But there's a catch. It's a one-way mission. There is no coming back. You will die. And yet, the cadets who are left, including Saburo and his friend Hideo, they resolutely accept. They have just become the 721st Naval Air Group, but they'll soon be known as the Jinrai Butai, the Thunder Gods. So what was this miracle weapon that was at the very heart of their sacrifice? Let's take a closer look at the machine these young men had to master.
This is the Ohka, which in Japanese means cherry blossom. Now, that name itself is incredibly poetic and symbolic. It's meant to liken the pilots to cherry blossoms falling at the absolute peak of their beauty, a glorious death for their nation. But what it really was a flying bomb, literally built around a massive 2,600-pound warhead. And to learn how to fly it, they had to start with unpowered gliders.
Saburo's friend, Hideo Suzuki, gave this really visceral account of his first training flight. Without any warning, the release charge goes off too early, and it throws his glider into this terrifying dive. The G-forces are just immense, threatening to make him black out completely. But with just sheer force of will, he wrestles the thing level just in time and manages to skid to a landing. A huge grin breaks across his face. He feels ready for the real thing.
I mean, the physical training was obviously brutal. But what about the psychological toll? What was really going through the minds of these young men as they prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice?
All of this spiritual preparation really came to a head on New Year's Eve 1944. The Thunder Gods all gathered together, and it wasn't just a party. It was a final, collective reflection on their lives and the mission that was waiting for them.
And right as midnight struck, the deep, heavy tolls of a Buddhist temple bell rang out 108 times, one for each of the earthly desires that cause human suffering. And the pilots just fell silent, listening, each man completely alone with his thoughts about what was coming. Just before dawn, they all walked up a small hill called Tornado Mountain. And as the sun just burst over the horizon, they shared a cup of sake and shouted "Banzai," which is a traditional cheer wishing a long life to the emperor. But for them, it was heavy with a totally different meaning. As one pilot later recalled, they all knew it would be the last time they ever saw the first sunrise of a new year.
And this brings us right back to where we started. April 12th, 1945. Saburo Dohi, now free from his bomber, is plunging towards the American fleet. Saburo hits a button, and the rocket motors ignite with this deafening roar, slamming him back in his seat. On the deck of the destroyer USS Mannert L, Abele, a lookout spots this tiny aircraft skimming the water at a terrifying speed. They had never seen anything move so fast. Before they can even react, Saburo's Ohka slams into the ship. The 2,600-pound warhead just obliterates the vessel's midsection, breaking its back in two. But the line between a successful mission and failure was razor thin. Just moments later, a nearby destroyer, the USS Jeffers, spotted another Ohka coming at them. Their guns opened up, and just 50 yards from the ship, an anti-aircraft shell hit its mark, completely vaporizing the Ohka and its pilot before impact. One mission was a success, the other a failure, yet they both ended exactly the same way. Now, Saburo's attack was actually deemed the most successful use of the Ohka in the entire war. But what was the real impact of this whole secret weapon program? Did it actually work?
Well, when you look at the numbers, the reality is pretty stark. Despite the immense sacrifice of every single one of the Thunder Gods, Saburo's strike on the Mannert L Abele was the one and only time an Ohka ever sank an enemy ship. They damaged 6 others, sure, but this weapon was far from the game-changer that Japan had so desperately hoped for. And here's where you see this incredible contrast in perception. They call themselves the Thunder Gods, a name that's just full of power and dignity. The Americans, though, witnessing these one-way attacks, they give the weapon a very different name, the Baka bomb. And Baka, well, that's Japanese for fool. And for the few who actually survived the war, like Hideo Suzuki, there wasn't relief. There was this profound sense of guilt, of unfulfilled duty. He had actually said a final goodbye to his friend Saburo, congratulating him on the great honor of dying for Japan. Hideo was left to mourn not just his friend, but what he felt was his own lost chance at a glorious death.
Years after the war ended, the handful of surviving Thunder Gods kept a promise they had made to each other. They met again on Tornado Mountain, that very same place where they had all watched their final sunrise together. They shared tea and, well, bittersweet memories of the friends who gave everything.
And all of this really leaves us with a tough question, doesn't it? The Ohka program was, by any military metric you can find, a failure. But when you hear the stories of men like Saburo and Hideo, it forces you to wonder, is a legacy only defined by its outcome, or is it measured by the depth of the sacrifice itself?
Follow and subscribe.